Welcome to Football Letter Live. This week, we welcome football letterman Garry Gilliam and Naval ROTC Alumni Interest Group President Bruce Apgar. You'll also see video coverage from last week's heartbreaker against Michigan, and we'll let all Penn Staters know how they can get involved with the Alumni Association and cheer on the Nittany Lions for the rest of the season. Football Letter Live is member supported, and we're so grateful for your support. If you're a Penn Stater, you belong in the Alumni Association. And if you love Penn State, you're in the right place. This is Football Letter Live. Well, welcome into Football Letter Live. We have Garry Gilliam with us tonight, joining us from Seattle. Bruce Apgar is here from the Naval ROTC Alumni Interest Group. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, John Petishnock. John, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. We were talking with Garry and Bruce before we went live here. We're going to have some good conversations with them, and we're looking forward to Senior Day on Saturday, which is special for a number of reasons. And so, we'll get to that. But yeah, it's a big week in Happy Valley. And of course, we've got Thanksgiving coming up. A lot to be thankful for and a lot to be grateful for. And we're going to talk about a lot of those things tonight.
Absolutely. Busy night here on the University Park campus. Wrestling is going on just up the road at Rec Hall. First match set to start in just a couple minutes. Penn State basketball taking the court against St. Francis of Brooklyn, looking to get back on the winning track after a loss on the road to UMass. But John, Senior Day, Penn State Alumni Association is a sponsor of Senior Day, something that we are very proud of here at the association to be able to sponsor all Senior Days across all intercollegiate athletics, not just football. And we have some seniors being recognized this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of similar to last year. It's an unorthodox Senior Day where, a lot of players have the ability to come back. Of course, last year there were only, family in the stands. This year, the fans and alumni will be back. And it's a special moment. We've talked about this over the course of the season where, at photo day, when the players are on the field with their families and they know how much they've sacrificed and worked over the years to have that moment. And now they're going to have that moment again on the field. I mean, the players run out, they share a hug with James Franklin. He shares a few words with them, and then their families are on the field. I mean, just last week we talked with Jackie Uri, and she was talking about Nick, and we had that awesome photo of them on the field. And so it's hard to kind of, condense 4, 5, 6 years worth of work or a lifetime's worth of work into a few special moments. But that's what Saturday is going to be like. And James Franklin's also talked about he wants players connected to the program for life, even after they graduate. And so Senior Day is Saturday, very similar to graduation ceremonies across University Park. Seniors graduate, but they never leave Penn State. That's their start of their lifelong journey with the Alumni Association. And so it's kind of, it's one ending and one beginning meshing. And it's very memorable for the people involved, especially for the players and their families.
Absolutely. Also, some seniors recognized by being selected for the Senior Bowl. Arnold Ebiketie, Jesse Lucchetta pictured here. Jaquan Brisker, certainly one of the top defensive backs in the country, getting that coveted invitation to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I'm like, I kind of was joking earlier, like I wanted to start the Arnold Ebiketie fan club. Like every week he just makes not just a big play, but a big play in a clutch moment. His first year at Penn State, I think there's a couple things there with Arnold is that, he transferred here. So I think that's something that James Franklin can really use in the transfer portal to say, hey, if you've got 1 year left, we're going to help you maximize your time on the field. You have other players who came back who could have gone to the pros. You've got, Jaquan Brisker, who has played his way probably into a day one selection. And those are guys who, if you want to have a successful team, you need guys like that who are in leadership positions, who don't get fazed by the moment. And I have the feeling, this is just kind of the start of the accolades for the seniors where they'll play in Senior Day and they'll get invited to the combine, and a lot of talent on this team for sure.
Well, we certainly have a lot of players who have over the years made a name for themselves at the combine, right? I mean, certainly the Penn State football weight and strength and conditioning program really prepares them to perform at the combine. It'll be bittersweet to have to say goodbye to some of these seniors, but you mentioned Ebiketie being a transfer. It's going to be really interesting to see how this transfer portal really affects what signing day looks like now for high school seniors, and kind of how coaches really reevaluate how they put together a football team year over year.
Yeah, I mean, it's had a real impact. And, James Franklin and the coaches have talked about this where, you've only got so many spots and, you would allocate those spots in recruiting. But now it's not to the point where like maybe we'll pick up somebody in the transfer portal. Like you really have to allocate those spots and count on getting somebody in the transfer portal. And you mentioned the strength and conditioning the program. Dwight Galt has got to be the most unsung hero in the entire Penn State football program. That guy is just on top of everything. When we were at Maryland, there were a couple guys who went out of their way to say hi to him before kickoff. Of course, he spent time in that program with James Franklin, very much respected in the college football profession. And you talked about Penn Staters having an impact in the combine. I remember Saquon Barkley went out there and had an all-world day. And somebody asked James Franklin about it, and he said, I don't want Saquon to take this the wrong way, but I thought it was kind of an average day for him. Right. Like Penn State, Dwight Galt, these guys know what Penn Staters are capable of, and not everyone realizes that. And then they go out to Indianapolis, and I mean, you look at it this year in the NFL, Micah Parsons, Jason Owe, now the country is starting to see what we've been lucky to see in Happy Valley for a number of years.
Absolutely. And both of those guys you just mentioned could end up being AFC and NFC defensive rookies of the year, right? Both having standout years for their respective teams. Obviously, Micah down in Dallas and Adafi in Baltimore. Yeah, absolutely. And look, everyone remembers the Troy Apke moment, right? With Deion Sanders, now head football coach Deion Sanders, I think 10-1 or 9-1, Jackson State Deion Sanders. But Troy Apke became famous after the combine because of how he kind of shocked Deion Sanders with how fast he was.
Yeah, no doubt. And the Penn Staters who go into the NFL and have success, I mean, they help pave the way for the current players because they know they come from the same program, the same coaches. They know that, if these guys went through the Penn State program and have come into the NFL and can handle things on the field, off the field, it bodes well for the players who are going to be going into the NFL every year. I mean, Jahan Dotson, Taylor Stubblefield just talked about it today. He was asked, what would you tell an NFL scout who asked you about Jahan Dotson? And Coach Stubblefield said, look, he's consistent. He knows, everyone knows how great he is on the field. He said, off the field, you're not going to have to worry about anything. He's going to represent your program the right way. And when you have that kind of trademark in the program, which Penn State has always had, it's going to be really fun watching the NFL. Like I don't watch the NFL all that much, but when you've got a standout Penn Stater on basically every NFL team now, you've got a reason to tune into every game.
Absolutely. Just a sidebar here. I mentioned Deion Sanders. I'm not one who's into gambling by any stretch of the imagination, but I saw something today where there's actually odds on the coaching carousel. So there are odds of where Deion Sanders might be the next head football coach. And the one getting the best odds is Deion Sanders headed to Florida State. That could be something interesting if that were ever to happen, to have primetime back in Tallahassee.
Yeah, let's get primetime in the Big Ten. I mean, let's get primetime back in Beaver Stadium. I mean, look, Florida State is obviously, they've been struggling for a while now. So they figure if they're going to struggle, let's bring in, but there's some value to that. You bring in a guy who knows about the area, knows about the program. But you know what? He's doing great. Deion Sanders is doing great at Jacksonville State. He's started to make a name for himself in the coaching ranks. And a lot of fun stuff to look forward to this season.
Yeah, Florida State, Tennessee, some Texas, schools like that who have made really quick coaching decisions over the years, right? And they continue to pay for it. They used to be the blue bloods of college football, and now are. I'd much rather be in the situation that we're in than any one of those other three schools. So, look, a lot to get to tonight. Wrestling is just started up in Rec Hall. Basketball is tipping off here, and we have Bruce Apgar with us. He is the president of our Naval ROTC Alumni Interest Group. Obviously, this weekend, game against Rutgers will be our military appreciation game. But Bruce is a 1989 graduate. Welcome to Football Letter Live. Bruce, how are you?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you inviting me on. I appreciate the Alumni Association support throughout the years as we have worked to build this alumni interest group.
Well, let me start with where we should whenever we have somebody of your ilk on the program. First of all, not only thank you for your service to the Penn State Alumni Association, but thank you for your service to our country. It is people like you who keep the rest of us safe and free from danger. And for that, we're truly grateful. So thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Yeah, Penn State has always been a very supportive of its military community, even way back when I was a midshipman.
So we always enjoy hearing about Penn Staters' origin stories. So tell us, how did you become a Nittany Lion?
Well, I actually applied and was put in alternate status for a Navy ROTC scholarship when I was at Boiling Springs High School down here in southern Pennsylvania. So I enlisted straight out of high school. And then when I was in the nuclear power training program, was offered a full NROTC scholarship and was actually recruited by Northwestern to go to their Navy ROTC program. But I was from Pennsylvania and I was headed to Penn State. So I turned down Northwestern back then. I don't regret that at all. So that's how I landed at Penn State.
So Bruce, last week as a country, we recognized and we celebrated Veterans Day, as Paul said, Saturday military appreciation game against Rutgers. So wanted to spend a little bit of time on this topic, and let's start, personally for you. What emotions are you feeling on Veterans Day, and what is that day like for you?
It's an important day. I continue to serve as the lead instructor in a Navy junior ROTC program in Chambersburg. So we had our cadets out and we marched in the Veterans Day parade down in Chambersburg, and we do things with the American Legion there. But it's a great day to see people. Pennsylvania is a very patriotic area, and you see people out supporting the military. You see flags out on lawns. And that is kind of reassuring to people who serve, and that what we've done is not unappreciated here in central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and speaking of being appreciated, Bruce, it seems like over the past decade plus, all across college athletics, Military Appreciation Day has become part of everyone's schedule. I know it's been part of Penn State's for much longer, but what is the significance to you that athletics dedicates a game to honor military veterans?
I think it goes hand in hand with a couple of things, like the Tickets for Troops program, where not veterans, but our alumni can donate money to purchase tickets that are then distributed to veterans and their families. We get the military flyovers. We have the enormous red, white, and blue out on the field, which our AIG a few years ago was invited to go out and hold that. You just feel a good deal of support from the Penn State community. We have tailgates. We've had President Barron stop by. You've been by multiple times, Paul. People seek you out and thank you at Penn State for your service. And that's really reassuring to the veterans out there.
Bruce, you mentioned being on the field holding the flag. That kind of leads us into Saturday. What does the Alumni Interest Group have planned for this weekend? How are you getting Penn Staters involved, and how are you going to be spending your time this weekend on Saturday?
Well, we have a new initiative with Captain Wall, who's the professor of naval science at Penn State this year. He wanted to set a culture where there was a tailgate that alumni were welcome for every home game. So we moved our tailgate from our traditional position in spots like 2 and 3 outside of Beaver Stadium over to Wagner Building, which is the home of ROTC since the 1960s. And so we help them host their tailgate for the midshipmen with all alumni welcome. So we'll have a pregame tailgate there. We'll be out in force for this game. A lot of our alumni are season ticket holders, so we'll see a lot of people. There's a great shot of the midshipmen marching in the homecoming parade there. I think right in front of Hammond, or not Hammond. That engineering building. That engineering building.
Yeah.
Is it Hammond? Okay. And so we have that. But our traditional focus tailgate is actually usually the first home game. We used to do the military appreciation game, but the weather's a little dicey, and our alumni date back to 1951, the very first class of graduating midshipmen after World War II. We have alumni in every class from 1951 on that are active, and a lot of those people, the military appreciation game in November is a little bit dicey. So we do our group ticket purchase for the first September home game. There's pancake breakfast day. That must have been a noon start for the tailgate. But that's what we like to do. And we have anywhere between 90 and 110 tickets sold most years in our group ticket purchase. And our largest tailgate, I think we had 180, including the midshipmen there one year.
So, Bruce, the mission of the Naval ROTC AIG is to promote fellowship and welfare of Penn State Naval ROTC alumni and current students by providing transition assistance, mentoring, financial assistance, social events to all members. Can you talk a little bit about how you fulfill that mission? And we've seen some great pictures here.
Certainly.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. That is one of our favorite things, is actually being involved with the current midshipmen. We have about 150 midshipmen up at Penn State. Every year, we will help them sponsor their military ball by providing financial assistance, helping support their guest speaker. But then we also show up in force at the ball. We had, I think, 9 alumni, including Vice Admiral Ron Boxall, who is a 1984 grad and is currently the senior military officer serving from Penn State, all in attendance this year. We also support a blue and white tailgate, and we support the tailgates in the fall. But then in the spring, we have a sword, a presentation military sword that we provide to one graduating senior, as well as rank insignia that we provide to each graduating ensign or second lieutenant in the Navy and Marine Corps. And then our most recent initiative, over the last 3 or 4 years, we have been working to endow a scholarship to support one of the midshipmen who don't have a full Navy scholarship. And that's really our biggest current push. We've been doing all of those things since 2013. We've been providing all of those support items, but this scholarship is really our newest initiative. And what we're trying to do here is support one of the midshipmen that's paying their own way through Penn State and is still going to go on and serve as a Marine Corps or a Navy officer. And so we are very close to crossing that threshold to start talking to the endowment committee. And you can see, if you would like to help us out, you can see our scholarship website going across the bottom there. But that's really exciting for us that we are just on the cusp of actually endowing this scholarship.
No, that's wonderful, Bruce. That's good news. We have no doubt that you're going to get there. Obviously, you're busy year round. Can you kind of take us, when you're having an event and you've got members there, maybe some you've known for a long time, maybe some you're meeting for the first time, Penn Staters of different generations. What's the mood and the environment kind of like at those events? And, whether it's just expressing appreciation, maybe sharing some information, what are those events like for you? And what do you hope that the folks attending get out of it?
Well, typically what we're trying to do is reconnect people with their peers. If you go to Penn State, we all know that you run with a group in about a plus or minus 4-year category. So we find as we do these events that people start to run into folks that were in the battalion when they were a midshipman. And then we find out folks served on the same ship in a different year. And you find these common threads between the veterans, or you find them in an aviation squadron or a Marine battalion. You say, oh, I was there, or I was there at that time, or did you know this guy? So it's a lot of association with familiar people. It's a lot of association with familiar events. And always in the Navy, you get tied to the personality of a ship, and people will know you from the ship you served on or those types of areas where you served.
Bruce, there's a couple things that I'm not sure that people watching realize. First is the size of Penn State's overall ROTC program, right? Outside of the military academies, Penn State has the largest ROTC program in the country. So I think that's kind of one point of pride that people don't always know that fact.
Yes, and especially on the scholarship side, because there are some schools where participation in a corps of cadets or something like at UVA or at I think Texas A&M. Well, those are mandatory things, but where it's an actual scholarship-based participation, Penn State across the services is leading the pack in that. And Penn State can be proud of the fact that they have both an Army, a Navy, and an Air Force program, and the Navy includes the Marine Corps. So they have all four services, and very few schools can boast all of those services in one location. So Penn State really is out ahead of things. It's major land-grant universities like Penn State that can really brag about that. So Penn State really does lead the pack in that.
Yeah, the other thing that I don't think people realize is that over the past 15 years, there have been more veterans on college campuses on the GI Bill that have fought in a theater of war than at any other time in the history of our country, right? I mean, I don't think people realize the significance of the wars we were fighting in Iraq and in Afghanistan in terms of the numbers of veterans that then come back and go into higher education, which seems to me that a strong Naval ROTC AIG that's really focused on transition assistance and mentoring is probably a lot of times that hand on the shoulder that those veterans need to kind of come back and kind of have somebody who understands where they were and is an example of where they want to be.
Yes, there's a lot of truth to that, Paul. And one of the great things that you just clicked in my mind is that Penn State just launched right before the COVID hit this fabulous new Veterans Service Center down, I believe it's Buki building, it was the old health center, and they have this fabulous multi-room study, support, and meeting center there for the veterans at University Park. I've also been over at Mont Alto, and there's a veterans center there at Mont Alto. There's a great Army ROTC program up at Altoona, and all of these are ways that veterans are welcomed into the Penn State community. Also, it's not an official fraternity, but there's a veterans group over at the Capitol. We used to be called the Capitol campus. I think now it's Penn State Harrisburg. They have a great Veterans Day program over there. So this university across the enterprise is very supportive of veterans. Our organization focuses on trying to reach out to veterans as they serve as midshipmen or in the battalion, or as you're leaving the service. We've got opportunities for you to connect to someone in your field of work who knows a way for you to transition into that civilian workforce.
Highlights from other things going on here at University Park. 10 minutes left to go in the first half. Your Nittany Lions are up 17-13 over St. Francis of Brooklyn. The wrestling team is out to a quick 8-0 start, powered by a tech fall by RBY.
Yes, we'll have like the Sports Center ticker at the bottom. Vince will throw up kind of like the Penn State scores as we get into the other sports seasons. Bruce, one of the things that we've kind of been talking around and talking a little bit about is leadership. Leadership when you get to college, leadership, throughout your life. College is such an impactful time for young people. How did your time at Penn State kind of shape your experience and kind of set you up for success where you wanted to be a leader not only at Penn State, but throughout the course of your life?
Okay, great question. It's so many opportunities at Penn State. And one of the things that you will be able to do there is find something that connects with you. So clearly the Naval ROTC was the center of our leadership development as midshipmen, but you also may have a job, you may have a club that you go into, and you find an interest where you find a way that you want to serve. And so as you develop leadership skills at Penn State, you can start to look out across the landscape and see that see when it's time for you to step out and into other organizations that need help. Penn State helps equip you with organizational skills. It helps equip you with communication skills that allow you to reach across a spectrum of different opportunities and provide assistance.
Bruce, we know you're a big fan of the Nittany Lions. Final home game against Rutgers. Do you have a prediction for the game?
Oh, I think this game's going to be a good one for us. Rutgers has a tradition of being a good game for Penn State. I would hate to see that tradition go south while we're there, but I'm looking forward to the tailgate over at Wagner Building. I've got great seats up in the south, Nittany Lion Club end zone seating area there with a couple of friends that I went to high school with, and both of them I went to Penn State with. So it's going to be a great weekend. I'm looking forward to the chilly football weather. It looks like it's going to be dry. That's the most important thing. And then we'll have a victory dance when it's all over.
All right, Bruce predicting victory over Rutgers. More importantly, we have never lost the tailgate. Bruce, thank you for joining us on Football Letter Live.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate you.
Talk about success with honor, John. It's always inspiring to talk to our military veterans, our volunteers. You know, they're always inspiring about the things that they continue to do in service to their alma mater.
Yeah, I mean, leaders talk about having a servant heart, doing what's best for others, putting others' needs before yours, and certainly a worthwhile group. Hopefully people can take some time to learn more about that alumni interest group. And as Bruce said, there are plenty of ways to support what he and similar groups are doing across Penn State. We were doing some research, and it was, to your point, even in the last 10, 15 years, it's become more of a point of emphasis, deservedly so. And you think about, where Penn State can take this in the next couple of years, and certainly another opportunity for a lot of Penn Staters to get involved. And certainly it's an angle that a lot of Penn Staters can connect to on a personal level.
That's right. Kevin Lashane, just a great comment from him from his time during Naval ROTC. And look, you don't have to be Joe Paterno to stop an ROTC student on campus and ask them about their day, or on Wednesdays when they wear their uniform, thank them for wearing their uniform and ask them about their experience. It's I've never regretted asking a student about their experience, about what they love about Penn State, and so encourage everybody to do that.
All right, so you said it. You said success with honor. Our next guest, another perfect example. So Garry Gilliam, I was going to say he's our first two-time Letterman guest on Football Letter Live. Technically, three-time guest after kind of dropping off earlier this season. But Garry, even with his busy schedule, has been gracious enough to join us. So Garry Gilliam, Letterman, offensive tackle and tight end from 2009 to 2013, graduated from Penn State with multiple degrees. He's from Harrisburg. Very happy to tell you he's from Harrisburg, is very fond of that area. And when we talk about success with honor, he is the founder and CEO of The Bridge, which I love. It's a for-purpose real estate development company. We're going to ask him about that. He also spent 5 seasons in the NFL, where he built connections on the field, off the field, and which has helped him, up to this day with The Bridge. And so for the third time in 2 years, Garry Gilliam, welcome to Football Letter Live. It's good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Garry, for folks who might have missed last year's episode, or, just kind of as a refresher, can you talk a little bit about, your journey to Penn State and what attracted you here out of high school, and especially being from Harrisburg?
Yeah. So, from Harrisburg. Something mom had always told me at a very young age, I was always big. She was like, I could care less about what you're doing in the football field and basketball court as an athlete. Show me what your report card looks like. I didn't graduate from high school, so I need you to graduate from high school. So that was reinforced. And I was actually compensated for every A that I got. In elementary school, I got $5 for every A all the way up through college. So that was kind of the standard that was set by mom. And then I ended up going to a private boarding school, actually in Hershey, Pennsylvania, called Milton Hershey School, completely cost-free school. You live on campus. Your family actually has to be below the poverty line to qualify to go to the school. The reason I share this is at the school, they have this thing called the whole child experience, or on our basketball team, we called it the whole man concept. And what it was not only are you active year round, you're a 3-sport athlete. And if you're not an athlete, are you still taking care of your health, physical health in that way? 1, 2, as a top athlete, we expect you to be a top scholar, right? So your academic accomplishments, spiritual wellness was number 3, right? Are you involved with the campus religious programs? Are you taking care of your mental health? doing things like that. And the number 4 was community engagement. Now that was went there when I was 8 years old, all the way through my senior year in high school, and where I was faced with the decision of where I wanted to go to college. I had a lot of scholarships to go to, Penn State, Ohio State, Stanford, partials to go to Yale and Princeton, right on the academic side. But really what drew me to Penn State were a few things. One, I wanted my university to be fairly close to home, right? So I'm from Harrisburg, so an hour and a half, 2 hours isn't too bad. The fam can come see me play. I wanted a chance to make it to the NFL, right? As much as I wanted to maybe go to Yale or Princeton or one of those schools, I need a chance to get into the NFL. And they're not turning out NFL players, constantly. A few here and there. I actually played with a few. But then number 3 was I needed my degree to really mean something, right? Like once finished playing with football, I needed a degree from the university I went to really hold some substance. It couldn't be a culture where it was known that the football players or athletes just kind of got pushed through class. It had to be actually the opposite. And that's where Penn State came in, right? With Joe Paterno's grand experiment. And not only will we be top football players, on the football field, but we're also going to be great students and finish our degrees and be academic All-Americans and academic All-Big Ten players. So it just really paralleled and was right in line with the way that I was raised and the environments that I was in. Penn State was a perfect match. Joe Paterno was the perfect coach for it. And I think Bill O'Brien and James Franklin have continued, that kind of success with honor, especially not just on the football field, but in the classroom too.
Garry, I want to go back to Milton Hershey for a second. And you were talking about the pillars and the whole person, the whole student experience at Milton Hershey. Is that where kind of the seed to giving back to your community was planted? Do you remember that moment that was kind of oh, wait, a lot is being done for us here as students. I'm going to need to turn around and do this for others at some point. Where did your whole community service mindset come from?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's spot on. The whole school itself was founded by Milton Hershey, the great chocolatier, and the school itself is the majority shareholder, I believe, in the Hershey Trust. And to this day, it's got, I think, the second largest endowment to any educational institution, second only to Harvard. So I'm at the school curious, like, one, where are the rest of these campuses at, right? Milton Hershey's done a great thing with establishing this campus here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and the town of Hershey, for that matter, for his workers. But where are the rest of these campuses, and where are the rest of the corporations thinking like Hershey did? Right? He created a town, an ecosystem, really a village for his workers to be the most successful that they could be, not just at his chocolate factory, but in life. And to this day, it's yielded a very successful town. It's an international destination that people from all around the world have gone to and know about. And it's obviously churned out this beautiful school that is churning out great individuals beyond myself. A lot of the kids that come out of that school are well-trained and well-educated and go on to do amazing things in their communities. So that is definitely where it started, because I saw how he set up his company. We hear, especially in the business, about, maximizing profit, and you hear about people, planet, profit. Well, Milton Hershey was ahead of his time, right? He threw philanthropy in there. People, planet, profit, philanthropy, right? He was known and is known even through the Great Depression, the founding of Hershey, the founding of Milton Hershey School. It was just in his essence, him and his wife's being, to give back in that way. And if it wasn't for them having that, I guess, foresight way back in 1909 to found that school, that saved my life. I definitely wouldn't be where I am today without their foresight and their willingness to give back to their communities. And, going to Penn State and what Joe Paterno was doing, especially for his donations for the library and education, really solidified it, at the next level, so just my whole life, it's kind of been there. And I've seen people who have gained things come back and provide opportunities and resources to those who oftentimes may not have access to those things. And it saved my life. And as much as I can to do something similar, that's exactly what I'm doing.
John, you got Garry Gilliam getting offers from Yale and Princeton. Is it possible that 2010, 2011, 2012 Penn State football team was the smartest football team in the history of college football, right? You had Garry, you had John Urschel, you had Steph Wisniewski, right? I mean, the list goes on and on. No offense to Matt McGloin, but right. That's a great lineup of guys who got it done in the classroom.
Yes. Actually, John Urschel was my roommate.
All right.
We talked about, I was gonna say we got to have that. Like that should be its own show. Like, the conversations between Garry Gilliam and John Urschel, that needs to be like a sitcom or a web series where the two of you debate something, or you guys play chess, or you do something.
We should have that be like a spinoff, right? Like we should have roommates, that lettermen who were roommates with each other. Yes. And then you and I just sit here and listen to them because we won't get to talk.
That'd be that. You would get some pretty good conversations.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, we're going to be back next year, so we're always looking for new ideas. Hey, Garry, you talked about being inspired to give back. That has led you to the Bridge. You're representing it with the shirt, the hat. Let's talk a little bit about that. And I said it at the beginning. I love the description. The Bridge is a for-purpose real estate development company. You take older properties, you turn them into eco villages in the inner city. Can you just please expand a little bit on that and maybe share a little bit about the vision and the mission of the Bridge and what you're looking to accomplish with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Inspired mostly by Milton Hershey and Hershey, Pennsylvania, and Milton Hershey School itself, and really kind of having like a front row seat to see the embodiment of this quote that talent is evenly distributed, but resources and opportunity are not. Right. When I went to this private boarding school was when I was 8 years old, and I was separated from my family, who was about 15-20 minutes away there in Harrisburg. But the way that my brothers, my cousins, right, the rest of my family, they were developing, it was a lot different than myself. And it was for no other reason than the resources, the opportunity, the environment, the culture that I had at Milton Hershey School. Right now, one side of it was, being removed from the hood and then literally growing up in a mansion, living a very privileged life, set my standard a bit higher, and what I could attain and what I needed to do to keep this standard of life was one thing, right? The infrastructure was important. But the other side of it is that Milton Hershey himself, he again knew how to create this culture, right? This whole child experience is very important at the school because it's something that drove me to do things like ballet, jazz, and tap, and learn how to play piano, guitar, take like fine dining etiquette classes, that come back in a good way when I have a speaking engagement in Rome, right? And I'm sitting down with like the Pope or something, right? Random stuff that you never think would come into play that the school taught us did come into play. Now, all that to say this, that it's not just about the infrastructure, right? It's not just about dropping a bag into the hood and building beautiful, shiny objects, because if myself or my family for generations don't know how to utilize these things, right? This 3D printer or this aeroponic system that is growing food, if I myself don't know how to use it in a proper way, then what really have we done for that community, right? It's not a lot. So we got to teach people how to utilize these things too. So our development company certainly acquires the schools, malls, warehouses, land, and we look to establish these eco villages, right, that have the infrastructure first and foremost for the community to work, eat, live, learn, and play. Again, modeled from the town of Hershey, with the chocolate factory, right, a place to work, eat, live, learn, and play, Hershey Gardens, Hershey Park, Hershey Theater, tons of housing around. Again, he set up the town of Hershey to be really a self-sustaining city that provided everything his workers needed. So in similar fashion, that's what the Bridge is doing too, right? Places to work, eat, live, learn, and play. Now, in our case, it's not a whole city, but kind of a 15-minute city, a value-add mixed-use development that has co-working spaces and maker spaces, right? That's the work branch, space for entrepreneurs to come and start businesses. Eat. This is looking to convert food deserts into food oases, right? So growing food on site with greenhouses, aeroponics, hydroponics, essentially growing food, sometimes without soil, with soil, in fully controlled environments, allowing us to grow food year round, right? So again, converting food deserts to food oases, restaurants and retail on site as well. So work, eat, live is housing. As much as you want to provide all these resources for people, you got to get the people who really need it right there at it, right? So it's affordable housing, as well as market rate housing. So everybody is welcome to live on site, with an extreme focus on the affordable housing individuals to provide them with a literal bridge, right, to be out of that situation in a few years, hopefully. So that's Live. Learn itself is our nonprofit, which is actually the educational aspect of all the branches. So I'll come back to that one. So work, eat, live, learn, and play. Looking to provide outlets in the play branch, not just sports complexes, within the inner city, but looking to provide accessibility, right? My brother who is handicapped, he has cerebral palsy. He doesn't drive a car, but if we can put a virtual reality, maybe, electric go-kart situation in there, this 4D virtual reality experience becomes more accessible. These outlets can help with mental health and physical health, right? So that's the play branch. Arcades, rock climbing walls, trampolines, batting cages, right? All those things. Now, back to that learn branch, because this is the important part. Again, not just about the infrastructure that's being built, but how does the community learn to use these things that you've just built, right? So the nonprofit establishes, again, the educational foundation to teach the community how to learn to work, learn to eat, learn to live, learn to play. And the mission is to get the community to be self-sufficient, right? So not just enough for us to create co-working spaces, but how exactly am I going to create a business? If I've never created a business, no one in my family has ever created a business, your co-working space does nothing for me. Your makerspace does nothing for me, right? So through partnerships, through our nonprofit with other local nonprofits, universities, we establish these incubation and acceleration programs that go on within, that work branch. And then that, replicates itself for eat, live, learn, and play. So teaching people how to farm, teaching people how to invest in real estate, teaching people how to save money, trades training, as well as teaching people how to take care of their mental health via yoga, meditation, therapy, right? Normalizing those things. So literally everything you would find in a city is kind of in a mixed use development, smack dab in the middle of where is needed most, where there are dilapidated schools and abandoned malls and some of those things. And what we like to say is that those two things together and that symbiotic relationship running directly parallel with each other, the infrastructure and the developmental programming create a system, right? And we call that systemic empowerment, right? If you throw the bridge in the middle of the Sahara Desert, a city should eventually start to populate around it, a self-sufficient one, right? That's the objective.
So Garry, you're clearly passionate about this. If our audience can't feel that, then we might want to do a pulse check, right? But I also think about, so you were also passionate about playing football, right? And so how did you kind of balance these two passions, right? While you're pursuing your professional career in the NFL, how did you kind of cultivate or kind of keep this passion that you have for building what you're building in Harrisburg? How did you keep that going?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that whole child experience, the whole man concept, and it's not an either or. Right. It's that the same attributes that are making me successful in the football field are the same attributes that will make me successful in other areas, right? So leaving Milton Hershey, going to Penn State, my recruiting coach was Larry Johnson, right? Because I was actually originally a defensive end right. before I went to tight end and then tackle. But one thing he told me, he goes, "Look, Garry, there's three aspects to your college career: athletics, right? Football, academics, and your social life." And he was like, "You can only be great at two of them, right? The choice is yours." And it was something that really hit me like, oh yeah, well, definitely choosing football. And I'm certainly choosing, academics for myself. It's something I pride myself on. And I think any player that comes to Penn State is kind of the same thing. So it was expected again, it wasn't surprising that a lot of players have double majored, right? I ended up triple majoring, which worked out, but it was a standard for myself. Like it wasn't like an either or what's your backup plan or something like this. Like the two were always concurrent with each other, even into my professional career, right? Like investing into real estate and investing into companies and writing business plans and kind of preparing for that quote unquote transition. I think the best way you do that is by realizing that there is no transition, that the two parts of your being are one, right? You are not a football player, right? That's just what you do. So you got to have a personality outside of it. You got to know who you are outside of it, but use again the same attributes that are making you successful in football and gear those toward other things, and you'll be really successful, right? So that's kind of what I've always done, right? That's life. It was balance and kind of that way, looking to be successful in all those areas.
Just as an aside, it's got to be hard to see Larry Johnson wearing red.
Oh yeah. Most certainly. Phenomenal coach. Probably one of the best coaches that I ever had.
Great man. Yeah.
Hey Garry, we were looking up, reading about the bridge, and it's not just in Pennsylvania, it's across the country. The bridge has 6 what you define as pipeline cities in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Atlanta, Houston, and New Orleans. Can you kind of take us through what you define as a pipeline location and how those locations are having an impact?
Yeah, certainly. So there are four things that we look for. We've got different rates of kind of these different impact measures. We're looking at the homeowner occupied rates. We're looking at the overweight and obesity rates. We're looking at if the area is a food desert or close to a food desert. And then we're also looking at the state ranking of their local school district, right? So when there's a certain threshold that each of those has to hit for us to identify an area as a space that we want to be. Now, no surprise, those areas, well, maybe a surprise, those areas actually overlap a lot across the nation. So that's what brings us to a space first. And then it's about identifying kind of the Garry Gilliam, if you will, of another bridge location, right? It makes sense for me to push this in my hometown of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But there are other athletes that are from other places, like Cleveland and Chicago, or, some of these other pipeline cities. It's about identifying those athletes, entertainers, investors who are looking to make a tremendous impact in their community, and kind of giving them the blueprint and doing a partnership with them to work on finding a location, developing a location, applying for grants, tax credits, right? The whole process. So again, we got our impact measures that identifies these cities, but then the willingness kind of a community, of a municipality to really, I guess, adopt the bridge initiative is paramount too. We don't want to come in and kind of do a cookie cutter thing. We have the overview, right? Work, eat, live, learn, play, but the specific amenities are determined by that local community. So the buy-in of that community is paramount to the success and the development of a bridge location. So we've actually been reached out to by municipalities, land banks, investors, developers, what have you, to have different projects, different future projects they want to work on, properties that they have available that they've contacted us with, wanting us to get involved with developing those in line with the bridge's values and mission and intent, but behind the way we do our for-purpose developments. So in reality, right now, a lot of places qualify for bridge locations. Now, hopefully in, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, because we're building differently, not just via the bridge, but, mixed use developments, infrastructure in general, urban planning, that we've gotten a lot further ahead as a society, that these disparities don't bring us to, cities anymore. Hopefully bridges aren't needed, in the future now. Kind of a utopian thought, but we're working toward it.
You had a lot of momentum in 2019, 2020 going into like before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. So where would you say you are right now with the initiative? And did the pandemic set you back in any way?
Oh, most certainly, especially on the development side.
Right.
Slowing stuff down there, construction costs increasing, because of supply chain issues and what have you. So certainly slowed down in some areas, but then also accelerated in other areas. The disparities, again, that really bring us to an area were magnified. Some of the disparities and inequalities between white and black and men and women in this neighborhood and that neighborhood, it was really put on Front Street, right? The environmental issues, our financial security, food security, our supply chain issues, like even as a country relying on other countries for some of the things that we can produce here. Again, a lot of that was really magnified. You can almost call it like the flood that lifted the arc of the bridge, because then what it did was tons of institutional investors and funds and grants and tax credits were drummed up to help solve environmental justice issues and social justice issues. A lot of the issues that we already have solutions for based off of lived experiences. And kind of realizing that you have to stitch up a wound and not just put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. So having solutions that stick, that are sustainable, that last in perpetuity, again, that are systems. 2020 magnified the need for things like that. And we were already ahead of the curve and ahead of the game with it. So it kind of put us on Front Street, which is a good thing, right? And not that it showed the need for the bridge, but that it showed the need for the bridge, right? To get the capital so that the bridge can move forward as it needs to.
So, Garry, one of your teammates at Penn State, actually, I saw him at Beaver Stadium earlier this season, Jordan Hill. He's with you. He's on your team at the Bridge. Can you talk a little bit about, his role and, what's the value in having, Penn State teammates, not just teammates on the field, but in, in business as well?
Well, like minds, truly educated, right? Not that other football players aren't, but, not as much. I like my Penn State guys, but Jordan's from Harrisburg. We both played at Penn State, then went and played together, at Seattle for a few years. And now again, like you said, working together, with the Bridge. Aside from him being a prominent athlete there from Harrisburg and that being a part of our development strategy is partnering with those individuals. Jordan gets it, right? He gets the need for it. He gets the solution that we're providing. And he also gets that he's got a responsibility, right, with his platform and his social capital that he's gained to do something significant in our community beyond the football camp, right? And he knows I've kind of always been like that nerd and drumming up business plans and what have you. So when I approached him, I was like, look, this is the plan. He was like, look, I'm in. Let's do it. Let me know what I got to do. I'm ready. So it was good on that front. And there's been other Penn State athletes too that have gotten involved, I think, with that same, mentality. And it's because we've been through fires together. You know what I'm saying? Like, aside from football games, like everything that happened at Penn State while we were there with our coach was a wild thing. And not a lot of football players experience something like that. So I think our relationships got even stronger, through what we went through specifically because of that. And now when we do things in business, I think you see a lot of Penn Staters working together, especially Penn State football players. And I remember when I was back just, this few weeks ago when we played Auburn in the whiteout game, I was able to see, Maudie and Daryl Clark and Navarro Bowman, and it was like we had just seen each other, a few days ago. And, they're talking about the Bridge and how they like to get more involved and things like that. So, we always checking on each other and we certainly support each other in everything that each of us does. Aside from the great culture at Penn State, of us being teammates, again, that some of the fires we went through, I think really forged our relationships.
Certainly forged relationships, certainly probably taught you lessons probably a lot sooner than some of you probably should have been learning those lessons, right? Talk about some of those things that you learned at Penn State that have now helped you through your NFL career and now into your life as an entrepreneur.
One that sticks out the most, which is interesting, also was at Milton Hershey. It was one of our sacred values, and that's commitment to mission. And at Penn State, we had it, and I remember it being kind of personified. I think we had a Navy SEAL come through, or somebody from the military, and they shared a story about continuing the mission, right? Commitment to mission. It was called Charlie Mike. I'm sure you guys have seen that phrase come up. So like that. And then, I remember going to Seattle, and it was kind of something that we spoke about kind of holding fast, continuing the mission, and like kind of ignoring the haters. So I would say that commitment to a mission and really just being relentless on that is extremely important in any area of your life. And it's not to say that just because you've got commitment to a mission that you're going to be successful, you're going to, win the game or whatever it is. But those losses, those punches in the face and the chin, they give you an opportunity to grow as an individual. And I think that kind of common denominator of commitment to mission through all different environments that I've been in through my life just goes to show that is one of the most important values that I got from Penn State. And once Joe, was fired and everything happened there, it was something that we really, really held on to, right? No one expected us to go 8-4 that next season. No one expected us to qualify whatever we did. No one expected us to bridge that gap between Joe and James, right? For what the team is, now, regardless of what, the last few games have been. But it is success with honor. It's commitment to that mission, right? It's the grand experiment. It's the culture, and not the negative culture that people tried to give Penn State, but the academic culture, the commitment to a mission, a successful mission in academics and in football, and just all those things that Joe always preached. I think you still see it still is in the blood, the blue and white blood of all Penn Staters. Whether they ever knew Joe, saw a game or not, it's something that is true to Penn State. Commitment to mission.
Yeah,
They still are, and it is what I'll say.
You're certainly talking about Rick Hawk Slater when he stood up in front of your team and he took that belt off, right, and said, "This is my Penn State football belt, and I wore it on every mission that I served, and defending our country." I mean, that's, if you're not ready to get up and run out of the room after that guy talks about that, right? Michigan is nothing compared to what that guy faced.
Oh, yeah. And it's kind of interesting when football players try and compare, like, we're getting ready for war. Like, nah, bro, we're not. Like, they're literally putting their lives on the line. Like,
Absolutely.
we're playing in the grass. Like, you got to respect that. There's a big difference between the two, right? But some similarities, with the camaraderie, teamwork, commitment to mission, some of those things. I have the utmost respect for those, that have served our country.
You hear military guys like Bruce, when they say the word mission, it means something different, right? I mean, Bruce talks about the mission of his AIG, but he talks about it as if it's a campaign, as if it is there's a higher purpose to people that just talking about the mission of their organization, right? It feels different coming out of them.
It is. It's the creed. It's the word, right? It's the Bible. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's what we commit to. Yeah.
John, I think I told you this story. I had like the ultimate dude moment. Auburn weekend, right? Auburn weekend. They had the airing of the
Saving the Roar.
Yes, exactly. And I didn't go to the airing. I'd seen it back in 2019 when it was a rough cut. But I'm driving to pick up my daughter at the high school football game that's going on. And this is Auburn weekend. The sidewalks are packed with people. People are pouring into the street to walk down the street. And down the street coming towards me right by the corner room is Rick Hawk Slater. And he's walking down with a little limp, and I roll my window down and I'm like, Hawk, welcome home. And he's like, amen, brother, and gave me a fist bump. Only in State College can something like that happen.
Charlie Mike. That's it.
Absolutely.
Garry, I want to sit here for like the rest of the night and talking to you, but want to also be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for joining us on Football Letter Live. I have a feeling next year you will be the first 4-time guest on Football Letter Live. And look, we'll work around your schedule. We appreciate you, Garry. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you do for Penn State. It was such a pleasure talking with you tonight.
Thanks for having me. As always, I'll definitely come back. I'm with it.
Thanks, Garry.
Appreciate you, Garry.
Thank you.
John, I'm sorry, I lost track of time.
No joke. I thought we were talking for like 5 or 6 minutes. I'm not just saying this. And I look up and we had been talking for a half hour.
Right.
And I'm thinking like the show's supposed to be done in like 3 or 4 minutes. Like, how are we like, no, let's keep talking. It's time stops or speeds up incredibly fast when you're talking with Garry Gilliam, whichever one makes the more sense. But it just, great guy. Great mission, wants to do things for the right reason, and like time just stops. It's like you could talk with him for 3 or 4 hours, and it's like Einstein's theory of relativity. Love that guy.
Absolutely. So I'm checking here on the basketball score. We are at halftime. Penn State is up 13 on St. Francis of Brooklyn, 40-27. It appears we're in a little bit of a tussle. With wrestling at the half, 11-7 up over Army, but a close match, probably closer than we expected tonight in Rec Hall against the Black Knights from Army.
Yeah, I thought that those would have been flipped. I thought maybe the wrestling would have been out a little further ahead, and maybe basketball would have been in the middle of a close game. But you know what? I have a feeling Cale Sanderson knows what he's doing, so I think they'll be okay up in Rec Hall.
Absolutely. Well, another guy who knows what he's doing is our producer, Vincent Mongero. Vincent, how are you tonight?
I am outstanding. Hope you guys are doing well. 20 feet from me here in the office.
Absolutely. Well, there's something going on in Rob Hall. Like a party just broke out downstairs. So I'm going to have to check out what's going on down there. But it's a little distracting. But we're going to power through here and finish up with Football Letter Live. Vince, what can we expect to be reading on the blog this week?
Well, I'm just dropping a link in the chat area now on Facebook and YouTube. But John had a great story on the letterman who came back to campus this past weekend for the Michigan game. I'll pull up some photos here. There was Daryl Clark, Paul Plesney, Dion Butler was back, and he was firing up the crowd. I can bring that video up here in a second, but just guys that obviously Spice Adams, everybody knows him, everybody loves Spice, and just a great collection of lettermen. And John wrote a little bit about their return to Happy Valley this weekend. Obviously, the game didn't go quite the way we wanted it to, but it was still a special weekend seeing all these guys back in Happy Valley. So check that out. We'll have the game previewing the Rutgers game. That'll be out on the blog. There's Spice there. You got to love him. And so yeah, I would check those out on the blog, the Football Letter blog, whenever audience members have a chance to get over there.
Game preview continues to be a popular each week on the blog. What are you predicting this week against Rutgers, Vince? Tell me something good, okay?
I'm going to keep it positive. That's usually not my MO when it comes to my sports teams, especially the Chiefs, if people follow me closely. But no, I think Penn State's going to bounce back in a decent way. And look, I think they have to. I think they need to show some sort of response. Obviously, it was a soul crushing loss against Michigan, in the way they went down, and kind of what I talk about in the game preview is the toughness of Sean Clifford. I don't think can be debated. You can say whatever you want about Sean Clifford as a quarterback, and that's your right, but you can't question Sean Clifford's toughness, because he has taken a beating this year, game after game, and the guy keeps getting back up. Even that last drive, for us on offense, you could tell he was hurting, and he still went out there. He gave it his best, and that's something obviously you can never question about Sean and his toughness. So I'm predicting a win. I'm not going to say they're going to cover the spread, which is 17 points, but I'm predicting a win.
Excellent. We're 17-point favorites, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that is.
I don't know what I said. I probably said something wrong, but
no. You said it right.
Oh, okay.
You said it right. I was just confirming it. It's
Yes.
been a little while since we've been favorites.
17-point favorites. Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. John, how could people follow us on social media, and what do we have coming up next week on the show?
Yeah, so as always, we've got the Football Letter Twitter account at PSU FB Letter. You'll find Penn State, football videos and photos and nostalgia. We've got From the Archives that we just shared a photo from Beaver Stadium's construction. Of course, follow the Alumni Association on Facebook. That's at Penn State Alumni Association. That's where you can keep up to date on our organization and our events and, inspiring alumni stories. The People of Penn State podcast, this is Paul and Vince's vehicle. It's been taking off and have been getting really, really good feedback. So check that out, the People of Penn State podcast. And then next week, special day, special time, Tuesday at noon, we will bring you Charlie Schumann, who we've spotlighted before. He is an all-time fan favorite. He's danced in Thon a couple of times.
Like 7 times.
Like he's like on the Dan Earl track of like Thon and football, and he just keeps coming back. But yeah, just an awesome guy. Like, again, like fan favorite. We're also going to talk with the Michigan chapter, President Brody Schultz. And then we're also going to bring on longtime chapter leader Garry Wade. We always see Garry when we go out to Michigan every year. And so Tuesday at noon, live show. We hope you tune in. And then that will take you up to Thanksgiving. Absolutely.
Looking forward to next week's special time. We got some great pictures here of man cave, fan cave memorabilia. That is something that is great. I don't ever see my wife allowing something like that to happen.
Yeah, we've got to let these scroll. There's there's probably 30 or 40 of them. And I'm not just saying this. These were impressive. These were not just things where we're going to throw up a poster. This was for me, this would take years to figure out the construction and framing it right, because I'm not inclined that way. I'm not much of a handyman, but these are, somebody put time and effort and skill into these.
Oh yeah.
Some of these photos are from our volunteer leader friend, Sean Hinkle. He submitted 3 or 4. So those are up here. But yeah, a lot of Joe Paterno, but just a lot of cool things that I've seen before, but not for a while. And then there's just some new stuff. And I think things that people just kind of combined and made into their own. So
that's amazing. I saw the Ham jersey up on the wall, and I'm like, Jack Ham wasn't number 9. I'm assuming it might have been Mia Ham from the U.S. Women's national soccer team.
Yeah, that was Mia Ham, and there were a couple other ones. You're in one of these, Paul, I should say. There in one of the cutouts. You're in there, and a couple of our other volunteer leaders. And so, of course, you've got Joe there, which is not uncommon. So, but yeah, it's just good to see. Oh, this is PSU. I didn't get it at first. There's PSU in the stone design.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, it's just we could devote.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Show.
PSU. Yeah. If you know, you have to want to see it to see it.
Yeah, so just a lot of creativity, a lot of passion. The big uglies,
That's amazing. Well, we want to thank everybody for joining us here on Football Letter Live. As John said, next week, special time, special day, Tuesday at noon with Charlie Schumann and the Michigan chapter. We're going to end tonight like we end every episode, like we end every football game with the alma mater. Until then, thanks for joining us, and we are
Penn State.